The wedding invitation arrived in an envelope so ornate, it practically screamed excess. Gold embossing framed the heavy cardstock, and the handwriting was perfectly calligraphed in shimmering silver ink. Emily's fingers trembled as she held the invitation, her heart pounding with a mix of emotions she couldn't untangle. She knew it wasn't an accident that the invitation was delivered by hand. This wasn't a kind gesture, it was a calculated move. The bride-to-be, Lisa Harrington, was Emily's former best friend. They'd grown up together, inseparable through high school and most of college, until Lisa's betrayal shattered everything. 3 years ago, Lisa had convinced Emily to pool their savings for a business idea Lisa swore would make them both rich. It had seemed foolproof at the time, a trendy online boutique catering to young professionals. But once Emily had transferred her entire $40,000 in savings, Lisa disappeared. Not overnight, but in a series of slowly escalating betrayals that Emily only pieced together after the damage was done. Fake invoices, ghost suppliers, and finally, a faked bankruptcy. Lisa took the money and left Emily drowning in debt. And now, here Lisa was, flaunting her new life. Her fiancé, Max, was the CEO of a tech company, and their wedding was being advertised as the event of the year. Emily could practically hear Lisa's mocking voice in her head, "Look at me. I took everything from you, and now I have everything you wanted." Emily felt the anger bubbling up again, just as it always did when she thought about Lisa. But this time, there was something different. The invitation wasn't just a slap in the face, it was an opportunity. For years, Emily had dreamed of payback. She'd imagined Lisa humiliated, broken, stripped of everything she held dear. But life had kept Emily too busy with survival to focus on revenge. She'd worked 2 jobs to pay off the debts Lisa left her with, finally managing to stabilize her finances. Now, she had a decent job at a marketing firm and a small but cozy apartment. She wasn't rich, but she was finally free from the weight of Lisa's betrayal. And maybe, just maybe, it was time to act. The wedding was scheduled to take place at a luxury estate just outside the city, 2 months from now. Emily spent the first few days trying to decide if she should even go. What would she say? What would she do? But then, late one night, as she scrolled through Lisa's perfectly curated Instagram feed, an idea began to form. Lisa had built her life on lies. Her entire existence was a carefully constructed facade, designed to hide the ugliness underneath. If Emily could expose the truth, if she could rip away that mask in front of Lisa's entire world, it would be the kind of revenge no amount of money could buy. Emily spent the next week digging. It wasn't hard to find dirt on Lisa, there was plenty to uncover. Old business partners she'd burned, friends she'd betrayed, even a former boyfriend who claimed Lisa had cheated her way through college by bribing professors. But the real jackpot came when Emily stumbled upon Max's ex-girlfriend, Nicole. A quick social media search revealed that Nicole and Max had been together for nearly 7 years before Lisa swooped in. They'd broken up just 6 months before Max and Lisa got engaged, and from the bitter tone of Nicole's posts, it was clear the breakup hadn't been amicable. Emily reached out to Nicole, unsure if she'd even respond. To her surprise, Nicole called her back within an hour. The conversation was cathartic for both of them. Nicole told Emily how Lisa had wormed her way into Max's life, pretending to be Nicole's friend while secretly seducing him. Nicole admitted she still had feelings for Max, but she didn't believe he'd ever see Lisa for who she really was. "She's poison," Nicole said, her voice shaking with anger. "But she's so good at playing the victim. She always has an excuse, a sob story, a way to make everyone think she's the innocent one. It's disgusting." As Emily listened, an idea began to take shape. Lisa's wedding wasn't just an event, it was a platform. A stage for Lisa to show off her perfect life. If Emily could use that stage against her, it would be the ultimate act of revenge. She didn't just want Lisa to lose Max. She wanted Lisa to lose everything. Over the next few weeks, Emily and Nicole worked together to gather evidence. Nicole still had access to some of Max's old emails, and she found correspondence that suggested Lisa had been scheming against him even before they got engaged. Emily also dug through Lisa's financial records, uncovering proof of fraud and embezzlement from their failed business. It was risky, borderline illegal, but Emily didn't care. Lisa hadn't played fair when she ruined Emily's life. Why should Emily play fair now? By the time the wedding day arrived, Emily had everything she needed. The venue was breathtaking, just as she'd expected. Towering flower arrangements, crystal chandeliers, and a string quartet playing softly in the background. Emily walked through the crowd, her heart pounding as she spotted Lisa in the distance. She looked stunning in her designer gown, surrounded by bridesmaids who hung on her every word. Lisa caught Emily's eye and smirked, raising her champagne glass in a silent toast. The gesture was so condescending, so smug, that Emily almost lost her nerve. But then she remembered why she was here. This wasn't about the past, it was about justice. About making sure Lisa finally paid for everything she'd done. As the ceremony began, Emily slipped into the reception hall, where a state-of-the-art sound system had been set up. She'd memorized the layout during her research, and it only took her a few minutes to locate the control panel. With trembling hands, she inserted the USB drive she'd prepared. On it was a carefully edited video, combining clips of Lisa's lies, evidence of her fraud, and even a recorded interview with Nicole detailing how Lisa had destroyed her relationship with Max. It was brutal, unflinching, and devastatingly thorough. Emily waited until the reception was in full swing before making her move. The guests were laughing and drinking, the dance floor packed with people celebrating Lisa and Max's perfect union. Emily slipped back into the control room and pressed play. The first few seconds of the video were met with confusion. The cheerful music cut off abruptly, replaced by Lisa's voice, her real voice, cold and calculating, as she bragged about conning Emily out of her savings. The room fell silent as the video continued, revealing layer after layer of Lisa's deceit. Gasps and whispers rippled through the crowd, and Emily watched from the shadows as Lisa's carefully constructed world began to crumble. By the time the video ended, Lisa was in tears, trying to explain herself to Max, who stood frozen in disbelief. Guests were already leaving, their expressions a mix of pity and disgust. Emily slipped out quietly, her heart pounding with exhilaration. It wasn't just about revenge, it was about reclaiming her power. For the first time in years, Emily felt free. As Emily stepped out of the venue into the cool evening air, the weight on her chest finally began to lift. She'd done it. For the first time in years, she wasn't just surviving, she was fighting back. She could still hear the distant hum of the chaos she'd left behind, the shocked murmurs of the wedding guests, the strange shouts of Lisa trying to salvage what was left of her dignity. The door clicked shut behind her, cutting her off from the noise, but the adrenaline coursing through her veins didn't subside. Her heart was racing, her breath uneven, and for a brief moment, she wondered if she'd gone too far. But then she remembered Lisa's smirk when she'd raised that champagne glass earlier. The same smugness that had been there 3 years ago when Lisa had taken everything from her, leaving her broke and broken. No, Emily thought. This wasn't too far. This was justice. She climbed into her car, her hands still trembling as she gripped the steering wheel. The plan had gone exactly as she'd envisioned it, better, even. But now that it was over, a strange emptiness began to creep in. What came next? She hadn't thought that far ahead. She'd been so consumed with her desire for revenge that she hadn't considered what her life would look like after she got it. Her phone buzzed in the cup holder, snapping her out of her thoughts. She glanced at the screen and saw Nicole's name. Emily hesitated for a moment, then picked up. "Did you do it?" Nicole asked, her voice tinged with both excitement and apprehension. Emily let out a shaky laugh. "Oh, I did it. You should have seen her face. The whole place fell apart. Max looked like he was about to pass out. Nicole let out a low whistle. Wow. You actually did it. I have to admit, I wasn't sure you'd go through with it. Neither was I, Emily admitted. But it felt right. She deserved every second of it. Good, Nicole said firmly. Lisa's gotten away with ruining people's lives for too long. She needed to be taken down a notch. They talked for a few more minutes before saying their goodbyes, and as Emily ended the call, a small smile tugged at her lips. She'd done what so many others couldn't. She'd exposed Lisa for who she really was. But that small victory was short-lived. As Emily drove home, her mind began to wander. What if Lisa retaliated? Lisa wasn't the type to roll over and accept defeat. She was cunning, ruthless, and vindictive. Emily knew that better than anyone. By the time she pulled into her driveway, a sense of unease had settled over her. The next morning, Emily woke up to a barrage of messages on her phone. At first, she thought they were from Nicole, but as she scrolled through her notifications, her stomach dropped. Lisa had wasted no time going on the offensive. A series of posts on Lisa's Instagram story painted Emily as a bitter, jealous ex-friend who had crashed the wedding out of spite. There were staged photos of Lisa crying with captions like, "Some people can't handle seeing others happy." Another post showed a blurry picture of Emily leaving the venue with the words, "The lengths people will go to for revenge, so sad." It didn't stop there. By mid-afternoon, Emily's co-workers were texting her, asking if the rumors were true. Apparently, Lisa had started spreading stories about Emily being mentally unstable and obsessed with her. She even claimed Emily had stalked her for years, which Emily knew was laughable but still unsettling. At first, Emily tried to brush it off. Lisa was just lashing out because she'd been exposed. But as the day wore on, the accusations started to pile up. Lisa had always been good at playing the victim, and it seemed like she was already spinning the narrative in her favor. Emily decided to log off social media for the rest of the day. She couldn't afford to get sucked into Lisa's games. Instead, she focused on work, burying herself in a marketing campaign she'd been assigned last week. But even as she typed away at her laptop, a nagging feeling in the back of her mind wouldn't let her rest. Lisa wouldn't stop until she'd regained control of the situation. Later that evening, Emily's doorbell rang. She wasn't expecting anyone, and her stomach flipped as she peered through the peephole. Standing on her porch was none other than Max. Her heart sank. She debated pretending she wasn't home, but Max knocked again, more insistently this time. With a resigned sigh, Emily opened the door. Max looked disheveled, his normally pristine appearance replaced with rumpled clothes and dark circles under his eyes. He was holding a crumpled wedding program in one hand, which he thrust at Emily as soon as the door opened. "What the hell was that?" he demanded, his voice sharp with anger. Emily crossed her arms, meeting his glare head-on. "That was the truth. You deserved to know who you were marrying." Max let out a bitter laugh. "The truth? You think this is some kind of favor? You humiliated me in front of everyone I know." "I humiliated her," Emily corrected. "Not you. And honestly, Max, you should be thanking me. Lisa isn't who you think she is." Max ran a hand through his hair, clearly torn between anger and confusion. "You don't think I know Lisa's flaws? Everyone has baggage, Emily. But what you did," he shook his head. "It was cruel. And you're not some saint here. You could have just come to me privately if you really cared." Emily laughed bitterly. "Privately? Do you have any idea how many times Lisa's lied her way out of trouble? How many people she's hurt? If I'd come to you privately, she would have spun it into some sob story and turned you against me. This was the only way to make you see the truth." Max stared at her, his jaw tight. For a moment, it seemed like he was going to argue, but then his shoulders slumped. He looked away, his voice quieter now. I don't even know what's real anymore. Everything feels like a lie. Emily softened slightly. Despite her feelings about Lisa, she couldn't help but feel a twinge of pity for Max. He wasn't the villain here, he was just another victim. Look, she said gently. I know it hurts. But you deserve better than her. She's not going to change. She's just going to keep using people until there's nothing left. Max didn't respond. He just nodded stiffly and turned to leave. Emily watched him go, her emotions swirling. She'd wanted to expose Lisa, and she'd succeeded. But seeing Max like this, broken and lost, made her wonder if she'd gone about it the wrong way. That night, as Emily lay in bed, she couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't over. Lisa wasn't the type to admit defeat, and Emily knew she'd hit her where it hurt the most. As satisfying as it had been to watch Lisa's perfect world crumble, Emily couldn't help but feel like she'd just lit a match in a room full of gasoline. The fallout was coming. And Emily wasn't sure if she was ready for it. Lisa Harrington had always been a master of turning chaos into opportunity. The morning after her wedding debacle, she sat in her luxury penthouse apartment, scrolling through the comments on her latest Instagram posts. Though her perfect wedding had gone up in flames thanks to Emily's stunt, Lisa wasn't defeated. No, she was plotting. The video Emily had played at the wedding was damning, but Lisa had built her entire life on one principle: people believe the story you tell them. And Lisa wasn't about to let someone else write her downfall. She sipped her latte as her phone buzzed constantly with notifications. Sympathy from her loyal followers was already pouring in. People believed her narrative: she was the victim of a jealous, mentally unwell ex-friend. Lisa smiled to herself. The wedding might have been ruined, but the fight was far from over. If Emily thought she could humiliate her and walk away unscathed, she was sorely mistaken. Meanwhile, Emily was beginning to feel the full weight of Lisa's counterattack. Over the next few days, she noticed small but disturbing changes in her life. First, it was subtle. A client she'd been working with at her marketing firm suddenly decided to pull their account, citing concerns about professionalism. Emily hadn't connected it to Lisa until a coworker casually mentioned seeing a post on social media about Emily's mental health issues. Then her landlord called. Someone had reported erratic behavior and claimed Emily was a danger to other tenants. Though her landlord dismissed the claims as baseless, the call left Emily shaken. It was clear Lisa wasn't going to take her public exposure lying down. Nicole called later that evening, her voice filled with concern. I just saw Lisa's latest post. She's not just spinning the story, she's coming for you. Emily sighed, pacing her small apartment. I know. She's trying to discredit me, make me look like the crazy one. It's classic Lisa. Nicole hesitated. Do you think she could actually ruin your life? I mean, you've already exposed her. What else can she do? Emily let out a bitter laugh. You don't understand how far Lisa will go to protect her image. She's already lying about me being unstable, and people are buying it. She's got money, connections, and a way of making herself look like the victim. If she keeps this up, she could destroy everything I've worked for. Nicole was quiet for a moment. What are you going to do? Emily paused. She'd been so focused on tearing Lisa down, she hadn't considered what she'd do if Lisa retaliated. I don't know, she admitted finally. But I'm not going to let her win. Not again. The next day, Emily began her counteroffensive. She knew Lisa better than anyone. She knew her secrets, her fears, and, most importantly, her weaknesses. Lisa thrived on appearances, on creating the illusion of perfection. If Emily could chip away at that illusion, Lisa's world would crumble. Emily started by reaching out to the people Lisa had hurt in the past. She compiled a list of old friends, business partners, and ex-boyfriends who had been burned by Lisa's schemes. To her surprise, many of them were eager to talk. "She's been doing this for years," one former friend, Ava, told Emily during a phone call. "I used to think she was just ambitious, but now I see she's a total sociopath. She doesn't care who she hurts as long as she gets what she wants." Another business partner, Mark, provided Emily with emails and documents proving Lisa had stolen from him during a failed investment deal. "She's a professional con artist," Mark said bitterly. "And the worst part is, she always gets away with it." Emily spent hours piecing together the evidence. By the time she was done, she had a damning dossier on Lisa that made the wedding video look tame. But she wasn't just going to dump it online and hope for the best. Lisa was too good at spinning narratives. Emily needed a way to ensure the truth couldn't be ignored. Her solution came in the form of a journalist named Hannah Tate. Hannah was a freelance investigative reporter known for her hard-hitting exposés on corruption and fraud. Emily had been following her work for years, and she knew Hannah would be the perfect person to expose Lisa on a grand scale. Emily reached out to Hannah, sending her a brief email explaining the situation and attaching some of the evidence she'd gathered. To her surprise, Hannah responded within an hour, asking to meet in person. They met at a small cafe downtown, where Emily laid everything out: the failed business, the fraud, the lies, and the people Lisa had destroyed along the way. Hannah listened intently, taking notes and asking pointed questions. "This is incredible," Hannah said finally. "If even half of what you're saying is true, this could be huge. But you need to understand, once this story comes out, Lisa is going to come after you harder than ever. Are you ready for that?" Emily nodded. "I've been dealing with her games for years. It's time someone stopped her." Hannah smiled. "All right. Let's do this." Over the next week, Emily worked closely with Hannah, providing her with additional evidence and connecting her with others who had been hurt by Lisa. It felt good to finally be taking action, to know that Lisa's lies were about to catch up with her. But Emily also knew she couldn't let her guard down. Lisa was cunning, and Emily was sure she'd catch wind of the article before it was published. Sure enough, just a few days later, Emily received an anonymous email. The subject line read, "You don't know who you're messing with." The email contained a single sentence: "Stop now, or you'll regret it." Emily's hands trembled as she read the words. She knew it was from Lisa. The threat was clear, but Emily refused to back down. That evening, she called Nicole to update her on the situation. "She's trying to scare me," Emily said, pacing her apartment. "But I'm not going to let her intimidate me." Nicole sighed. "Just be careful, okay? Lisa doesn't play fair. If she feels cornered, she might do something drastic." Emily nodded, though she couldn't shake the feeling of unease that had settled over her. The next day, Emily woke up to find her world turned upside down. Her email inbox was flooded with messages, most of them angry or accusatory. Her social media accounts were bombarded with hateful comments, calling her a liar, a fraud, and worse. Someone had leaked a fake story online, claiming Emily had stolen money from the failed boutique business and pinned it on Lisa. Emily's heart sank as she realized what was happening. Lisa was trying to discredit her before the article could be published. Panicking, Emily called Hannah. "She's smearing me," Emily said, her voice shaking. "She's making it look like I'm the one who stole the money." Hannah's voice was calm but firm. "This is exactly what I expected. Don't worry, we're vetting all the evidence, and the truth will come out. Just stay strong." But staying strong was easier said than done. Over the next few days, the attacks on Emily's character escalated. Old acquaintances came out of the woodwork, parroting Lisa's narrative. Co-workers began avoiding her, and her boss even called her in for a meeting to discuss the negative attention she was bringing to the company. Emily felt like she was drowning. Lisa was everywhere, her influence seeping into every corner of Emily's life. But despite the mounting pressure, Emily refused to give up. She'd come too far to back down now. When Hannah called a week later to tell her the article was ready to publish, Emily felt a mix of relief and dread. This was it. The truth was finally going to come out. But as she hung up the phone, Emily couldn't shake the feeling that Lisa still had one last card to play. And whatever it was, Emily knew it would be devastating. The morning the article went live, Emily woke up with a knot in her stomach. It wasn't just the fear of Lisa's retaliation, it was the knowledge that everything would change after this. For better or worse, the story would be out there for the world to see. She hadn't told anyone, not even Nicole, about the publishing date. She didn't want to give Lisa a chance to strike preemptively. As Emily brewed her coffee, her phone buzzed non-stop on the counter. Notifications flooded in, texts, emails, and social media alerts. Tentatively, she picked up the phone and opened the link to Hannah Tate's article. The headline hit like a freight train: "The Glamorous Grifter, the Shocking Rise and Fall of Lisa Harrington." Hannah had outdone herself. The piece was a meticulous takedown, exposing Lisa's web of deceit in painstaking detail. The failed business, the embezzlement, the fraud, it was all there, backed by airtight evidence and testimonials from Lisa's many victims. But the most damning section was about Max. Hannah had uncovered new details, including Lisa's manipulation of his company's finances. She'd secretly funneled funds from his accounts to bankroll her lavish lifestyle and hide her crumbling personal debts. It wasn't just a betrayal, it was criminal. Emily couldn't stop herself from smiling. For once, Lisa's perfect mask had been ripped off for the world to see. But as Emily scrolled through the comments on the article, she noticed something strange. Among the expected outrage, there was a new name being whispered: Tanner Harrington. Emily frowned. Tanner was Lisa's older brother, someone she barely remembered from her high school years. He'd been in and out of trouble back then: minor arrests, petty theft, and rumored drug problems. But Lisa rarely talked about him, and over the years, it seemed like he'd vanished entirely. What did he have to do with anything? Before Emily could dig further, her phone rang. It was Nicole, her voice frantic. "Have you seen it? The article?" "Yeah, I just read it." "It's perfect," Emily said, still scrolling through comments. "No," Nicole interrupted. "Not the article. The video." Emily froze. "What video?" Nicole hesitated, then sent her a link. Emily clicked it, her stomach sinking as the video loaded. It wasn't on a major platform, just a small, shady gossip site. The headline read, "The Truth About Emily Harper, Lisa's Revenge." The video was a bombshell. Grainy security footage showed a younger Emily and Tanner Harrington in what looked like a hotel lobby. They were laughing, leaning close to each other, and then Tanner handed her an envelope stuffed with cash. The date in the corner of the footage was 3 years ago, the same year Emily and Lisa's business had imploded. Emily's blood ran cold as she watched. The video cut to a series of text messages allegedly between Emily and Tanner, discussing money transfers and vague plans to set Lisa up. The messages painted Emily as a willing accomplice in a scheme to frame Lisa for the boutique's failure. The final clip was a recorded voicemail from Tanner's voice, slurring slightly, "Don't think I'm going down for this alone, Emily. If I get exposed, so do you." Emily stared at the screen, her heart racing. It was a perfectly orchestrated attack, designed to discredit her and make her look just as guilty as Lisa. The problem was, it wasn't entirely false. 3 years ago, after Lisa had drained their joint account, Emily had been desperate. She'd been drowning in debt, unable to pay rent or even afford groceries. That's when Tanner had reached out, claiming he had dirt on his sister. He'd offered her a deal: he'd help her take Lisa down if she gave him a cut of whatever she recovered. Emily had refused at first, but Tanner had been persistent, and in a moment of weakness, she'd agreed to meet him. He'd handed her the cash as a good faith gesture, claiming it was part of what Lisa had stolen. But Emily had never gone through with Tanner's plan. She'd been too scared of the consequences and too ashamed to admit how low she'd stooped. She'd taken the money but cut all ties with Tanner after that. And now, it was coming back to haunt her. Nicole's voice snapped her back to reality. "Emily? Are you still there?" "This is bad," Emily whispered, her voice barely audible. "Really bad." Nicole sighed. "It's Lisa. She must have dug this up to save herself. You have to fight back." "But how?" The damage was already done. Within hours, the video went viral, and Lisa seized the opportunity to spin the narrative. She posted a tearful Instagram video, claiming she'd always suspected Emily had been working with Tanner to sabotage her. "I never wanted to believe it," Lisa sobbed to the camera. "She was my best friend. But now the truth is out." The media frenzy was immediate. Suddenly, Emily wasn't just the whistleblower who exposed Lisa, she was a potential co-conspirator. News outlets questioned her credibility, trolls flooded her social media with hateful comments, and her boss placed her on indefinite leave until the situation is resolved. Desperate, Emily tried to contact Tanner, but his number was disconnected. She even considered going to Lisa directly, but she knew it would be useless. Lisa had already won the narrative. The more Emily tried to defend herself, the guiltier she looked. 2 days later, the fallout reached its peak when Max held a press conference. Standing in front of a sea of reporters, he announced his resignation as CEO of his company. He apologized to investors and promised to cooperate fully with authorities investigating Lisa's financial crimes. But before leaving the podium, he dropped a bombshell. "I've recently learned disturbing information about both Lisa Harrington and Emily Harper," he said, his voice steady but cold. "While Lisa's actions are inexcusable, it's clear that Ms. Harper also played a role in this deception. I trusted both of them, and they betrayed me. I'll be taking legal action against everyone involved." Emily watched the broadcast in stunned silence. Legal action? Against her? She hadn't stolen anything, but the video, the messages, and the narrative Lisa had constructed made it impossible to prove her innocence. By the end of the week, Emily's life was in ruins. The story had gone global, her reputation was shattered, and she faced potential lawsuits she couldn't afford to fight. Lisa, on the other hand, had somehow managed to position herself as the victim of a toxic friendship, gaining sympathy from her followers despite the overwhelming evidence of her crimes. It wasn't until months later, when Emily was packing up her apartment after being evicted, that she received an anonymous envelope in the mail. Inside was a single photo, Tanner and Lisa, sitting together at a cafe, laughing over drinks. On the back of the photo, someone had scrawled a single line, "You were just a pawn in her game." Emily stared at the photo, the truth hitting her like a punch to the gut. Tanner had never been working against Lisa. He'd been working with her. The entire scheme, the money, the fake plan to expose Lisa, had been a setup from the start. Lisa had anticipated Emily's thirst for revenge and manipulated her into taking the bait. She hadn't just retaliated against Emily, she'd orchestrated the entire downfall. As Emily sat on the floor of her empty apartment, she realized the full scope of Lisa's brilliance. She hadn't just won, she'd destroyed Emily completely, and she'd done it with a smile. The game was over. And Lisa had won.